All right, I am going to try to present today's material in a way that will encourage your own thought and input. Yeah, it's as much as I talk about teaching on higher levels, it does seem like mostly what I do is dump information. So, you disagree with that?
Yes, sir.
Really?
I do.
Are you trying to flatter me? No, really, it just seems like that you guys are smarter than what I let on. I tell you things that you probably know already. And I would like you to use your brains more. I'm sorry?
So we just don't know that we know them.
You don't know that you know. That's right. But if we could prick the right parts of our brain, and it's, oh, okay. And I know that. What's that, Joy? You were speaking to your neighbor, something that I think I wanted to hear.
You said something about pricking my brain. It sounds like it hurts.
Oh, no. That's like, if you do it in the right spot, they say you don't even feel it. You can remember things from, precisely that you never thought of in 20 years. No, not acupuncture. So, all right. So today's topic is public relations. Public relations. A lot of you, everyone had a response to that statement. Some of them were not related to the subject. But I would like you to tell me what your response was to that statement. What came to your mind when I said, today's subject is public relations? Okay? Now, if I call on you and somebody has already said what you were thinking of, you can just repeat it rather than saying, yeah, what they said. Just say it again. Jacob.
The first thing that came to my mind was sometimes if it's a Christian school we're talking about, it could be an uphill battle.
An uphill battle.
In certain places, it has a stigma.
Christian education has a stigma.
Yes.
Okay.
I know in my state specifically, a lot of Christian schools run required for different things. So you tell someone you're from a Christian school and you have to immediately make up ground to get them on neutral ground.
Okay. All right. So that could be something that's related to the idea of public relations. Megan. I remember.
What's that?
What's that? Okay. What's that? Should we try to answer that question? All right. We will. Barrick, what did you think of?
Kind of what's that?
Kind of what's that? And kind of what else?
Kind of like public relations, not something I do very good at.
Okay. And why do you say that? What do you think public relations is? It's because you think, oh, I don't do very good at that.
Well, I guess maybe I thought public relation would be something to the effect of socializing.
Socializing. Okay. Socializing. You socialize just fine with particular people. All right. And what about socializing? Why is that? What about it that you think is connected with public relations that you don't do very well?
I don't know what public relations really means, I guess.
I know that.
Well, I guess I did.
But you're addressing a part of what it is, and that's I want to just explore that some.
So what was your question again?
Okay, you said I don't think it's something that I do very well, and you said socializing. What part of?
I have a hard time. Like I do great with kids. I really enjoy working with kids, but people, even like older teenagers through people my age, I have a hard time just like approaching especially if I don't know them, and just finding common ground and starting conversations.
Okay, and so in your mind, at least what you imagine, public relations would at least include approaching people that you don't really know and trying to have a conversation with them. Okay? All right? I didn't say that was right or wrong. We're just seeing what people think about it. Sarah?
Me, Sarah?
Yes, you. That's Sarah. Sarah, front and center.
Okay. Public relations, I think of, I don't know, how maybe a public school even, and how they have like a board, and how they have to
A board. Okay.
in that way, and how
They have to relate.
to their board, how the board,
Who relates to the board?
like the school systems, maybe the principal, and then they have to answer to their higher authority.
Okay.
And how they
Okay.
relate with each other,
All right.
and how they have to relate it then to the parents and the students and the other teachers.
All right. Okay. So far, the Barrick not necessarily, but these two have connected the idea of public relations to schools, which is a good connection to make since this class is about the Christian school. But did anybody just think public relations and something not really related to schools came to mind? Yes. Okay. So Mary.
I was thinking about, like, the first thing that came into my mind was, like, the president or a diplomat or something.
The president or a diplomat, and in what sense?
Like, he has to be kind of on this, almost on the same terms with the people, with the same kind of thoughts, or just relating things to them in a way so that they understand what he wants, and it's something like what they want.
Okay, and I don't know if I'm following you directly, but it makes me think, who does that for the president? There's a specific position that does, at least what I'm understanding her to say, does that for the president. Rick,
Press secretary.
the press secretary. How many have ever heard of the press secretary? Okay, who is the press secretary right now? Is it Josh Ernst or something like that? He was at one time. I don't know if he still is or if it's somebody else. So, what the press secretary's job is to do what? Make the president look good. Does that sound like, yeah. And he make the president look good, make the president's ideas, present the president's ideas to the press. And the press is going to report that to the public. Yes. See, public, that's related, isn't it? It's related. Public relations. Ah. That's kind of twisting the meaning there, I think. But so, okay, and what did you think of?
It doesn't make sense, but an ambassador.
An ambassador. It actually does make sense. Doesn't it? I mean, what is the press secretary, if we're thinking along these lines, the press secretary is the president's ambassador to the press. Okay? An ambassador is the nation's, presents the nation to other nations. Okay, all right. Davey, way back, I said today's subject is public relations. What came to mind?
I guess just the ability, the skill, or the lack thereof to create a positive perception of an organization or something.
Okay.
General public.
So you would say something like, if you have good public relations, you have skill or you have good skills at presenting yourself positively to the general public, something like that. That's what comes to mind, something related to that. Okay. Yeah.
Related to school, I think of like having to work with people to make your school look good, and
Having to work with people to make
Like,
your school look good.
trying to publicize your school to make it look like a place you would want to go.
Okay. What is she, there's a word for what she just described there. Does anybody? Barrick? Advertising. Okay, advertising would be part of that. There's another word. Anybody? Promoting, that would be part of it. How about the word marketing? Marketing. That fits what you're saying. we go to somebody, and you might even go to somebody and say, here's what we do. What can we do to market ourselves to people and make us look good to people? Because we want ourselves to look good to people. Okay. You also said the word publicize. Does publicity, have you ever heard of a publicity stunt? Okay. What do you think of when you hear publicity stunt? It's probably a person comes to mind, or some type of a person. Anybody? Joy?
Just, I don't know, something somebody does just to get attention.
Something somebody does just to get attention. We think of movie stars and rock stars that do stupid things, even presidential candidates that do things just to get publicity. If their name is in the headlines, they're more popular. People will be familiar with them. They will pick their song off a list on however you do that. I'm old fogey. They'll pick their CD out of the rack and buy it. They'll want to watch that film because that person is in their mind. Publicity. Some people think that any kind of publicity is good. It seems like we wouldn't agree with that necessarily. So, public relations. It includes the things that we've talked about. We do want people to know what we're, who we are, that we exist. So we need some publicity. Yeah.
You would also want to have a peaceful relationship with, like other schools even, and with the community.
Okay. A peaceful relationship with other schools and the community.
Yeah, so you wouldn't want protesters.
Yeah. But protesters get you a lot of publicity. Right? So we're seeing, okay, public relations, let's just give you some things that it's not, or it's not just. Okay, so it's not this, or it's not just this. Okay, here's a list. Publicity. Okay, so public relations is not just publicity. I haven't said what it is. We're going through this list kind of to say what it's more than just this. But we understand what publicity is. And publicity isn't always desirable. But being known by the public, being recognized, having your name recognized, when somebody hears your name, they've heard of you, that's part of publicity. So that is part of public relations, but it's not just publicity. Here's something that, if I say the word propaganda, okay, what came to your mind there?
I've been thinking that for since we started. But
Okay, you've been thinking that since we started. What is propaganda? What's propaganda? How many have heard the word propaganda? Okay, almost everybody. What type of noun would you associate with propaganda? I think of a country. Okay, but maybe you think of something else. I don't know. Everybody raise your hand that you said you've heard of propaganda. What comes to mind with propaganda? What type of person or what activities? Sarah,
When people say they handed out propaganda about stuff, maybe they hand out flyers about a certain.
Okay, so you've heard of it in the sense that that's not a good word. It's a criticism. You're handing out tracts and somebody says, get that propaganda out of here. Okay, why are they using the word? What are they saying about propaganda? Propaganda is what? Or when I hear the word propaganda, I think immediately of some totalitarian government's newspaper. It's all propaganda. I think of North Korea's news agency. Okay? The North Korean people think that the North Korean government is the greatest government that has existed. Why? Because they can only watch or listen to North Korean news. And that news is telling a story. But is it telling the whole story? No.
The way I've heard it summed up in the past is it's the representation of a narrative or a story that's being told like that. But it could be one side of it, it could be one part of it exaggerated. But not all propaganda is bad immediately, but it can be.
So most of the time, and what he said, and propaganda most of the time is just telling a part of the story.
Repeatedly, emphasizing it.
Yes. It could be that it's just telling a part of a story, but when you say propaganda, you think that it's just, you're telling this one part of the story and you're telling it over and over again so that you're publishing it in a certain way, so that that's the only thing people think about when they think of you. Let's just put it that way. The problem with that is that there's something, you're only telling part of the story. And if it's propaganda, the criticism or the negative aspect of that is that there's a really important other part of the story that you're not telling that lends propaganda toward being untruthful even, or deceitful or dishonest, not telling the whole story. Okay? So, people would, let's just say, I don't know, I could say people could accuse us, and I'm saying this directly about us, but probably most Christian schools, of propaganda by saying that when we say we have an excellent education, okay, but we don't say you might have a hard time getting into a secular college with our diploma. Okay? So that they would accuse us of propaganda. We would say we have graduates that get into secular colleges all the time. Okay? They do get in. But they would say, yeah, but is it accredited and blah, blah, blah. So you're not saying that part. That's just a bunch of propaganda. So some people think that that using propaganda is necessary at certain times. Yeah, I don't know. You don't. Let me just say this: if you make a brochure, you don't need 3 pages of disclosures on the back to make sure your brochure is not propaganda. But anyway, so public relations is not propaganda, not telling the whole story. It's not press agentry. That's an older word. The idea there is that, a press agent or a press secretary, somebody whose job is to make you look good. We might say, and maybe this is an older term too, a spin doctor. Okay? Your director, let's say you're a school, your director or your main person for public relations is not just a spin doctor. He's not just going out and spinning everything that happens in relation to the school to make it look good. There's people that do this. I mean, it's disgusting, but that's what the president's press secretary's job is. Everything that happens, he's got to spin it so that the president looks good in that situation, whether it's something that happened in the country that people are going to say, what are you going to do about it? Whether it's something he said, whether it's something he wants to do. And this is something that's regardless of who the president is. Doesn't matter whether he's somebody you like or somebody you don't like. The press secretary's job is not, he's not doing public relations. He's doing press agentry. His job is to make the president look good. Okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with letting people know the good things that you're doing. Okay? But public relations isn't just spinning everything so that so that you always look good. Excuse me. It's not influence peddling. That's an odd word, but think of, or odd phrase, but think of that. Influence peddling. What's peddling? Soliciting, selling, trading. Okay. So, and what's influence? Okay. The idea would be that you're not just going to find influential people and trying to, whatever, get there on their good side. Get them, somebody that's influential, to say that you are a good organization. You know, if we could get, I don't know, I could call the name of somebody, but you guys were born after you. Yes.
Is this the idea of like public endorsements then?
Yeah, like a public endorsement. There's nothing wrong with a public endorsement. But if, I'm trying to think of who would be a popular person. Well, let's just be bizarre about it, okay? We could go and say to Bernie Sanders, hey, will you endorse will you say something nice about our school? And then we say, Bernie Sanders says, you know, he's got influence, and we've kind of we give him some money for his efforts. He doesn't really know us that well. He's seen a couple brochures, whatever. That's to me what the idea of influence peddling is. Lobbying, we kind of know what that is. And there's not anything necessarily wrong with lobbying, but public relations is more than just lobbying. And marketing. So all these things have elements in them that may appear in a good public relations program, but they are not what public relations is. So I see some people's faces look like they're even more confused now than when I said we're going to talk about public relations today. But let me ask you now, do you have any ideas of what public relations is that are different from when we started? I actually said a couple things that are directly related to it. I skimmed over them really fast so you wouldn't catch them. Megan?
Oh, I obviously didn't catch that.
It's okay. So it's still, what's that?
No, I mean, I get what you're saying. Well, yeah. Maybe it won't work, I don't know.
Heather, could you tell us a little bit of what you think is involved in public relations?
Well, I still do not really know what I know, but it is not.
Very good. Very good. Are you sure you know that, or are you just looking at words that you've typed down there? All right. So there are books and books and books written about public relations. There's a lot of books written about marketing, but marketing is probably the biggest part of public relations that we would think about or immediately think of. And marketing, if it's held in check, there's nothing wrong at all with marketing. Okay? There's nothing wrong with marketing necessarily, as long as it's held in check, I would say. But what holds it in check? What holds it in check is if it's part of a public relations program. Right? And you can say, I went to school and they didn't have a public relations program, and Fairhaven doesn't have a public relations program, and but you don't have to have a public relations, an office of public relations in order to have a public relations program. Okay? So, I'm going to give you a very good definition of public relations, but I will say that this definition is from a secular writer, from a secular perspective. Is that a hand or just a, okay, yes?
Can you give an example of lobbying in relation to what we're talking about?
Okay, well, one of the public relations, generally people want to have a good, they want to live in favorable conditions. They want to do their work under favorable conditions. So you could lobby, and we think immediately of lobbying government, but you could lobby representatives to make sure that you exist in favorable conditions, that you exist and do your work in favorable conditions. You want to make sure that laws are not passed that hinder what you're trying to do. But lobbying can also be just going to an influential person and getting them to do something for you or something like that also. To me, lobbying is just going out and finding people that you think can help you and talking to them and getting them to help you. So it's not limited to just government lobbying. So, all right, now this definition I would like you to write down or type or memorize. Public relations is a planned effort to influence public opinion by good character and responsible performance based upon mutually satisfactory two-way communication. A planned effort to influence public opinion by good character and responsible performance based upon mutually satisfactory two-way communication. One more time. A planned effort to influence public opinion by good character and responsible performance based upon mutually satisfactory two-way communication. All right? So, by that definition, what is the one word that public relations is? Now, this is a grammar question. Public relations is what? Nope. Look at the definition. Devante?
Performance?
No. Look at the definition.
Speech or, wait, I think I know.
Excitement almost there. I think I know. Sarah, oh? An effort. Is that what you had? What was dawning on people? So it's an effort. What kind of effort? It's planned effort. Okay. What do we base our planning and our efforts on? What is our effort based on? Lydia? Yes. Okay, it's based on communication. What kind of communication? Two-way communication. Okay, all those words, every word in there is very, very important. Okay, and that's the gist of it. But what do we want our effort to do? Influence, right? And it's going to influence what? Public opinion. And how, or by what means, are we going to influence public opinion? Good character and responsible performance. Barrick.
Between who is the two-way communication?
Good question. That takes us to our next point. No, really, a very good question. It is two-way communication. So who is it communicating two ways? What's one way? Who's one person or one entity involved in this communication? You, right? Or me, or us, or whatever. The institution. And if we come to Christian school, let's go to Christian school. There's going to be communication between the Christian school and whom? Now, in the public relations world, the word for that is your public. Okay? You have different publics. We have a public here and a public there. Here a public, there a public, everywhere a public. Okay? So, all right? So that I'm going to use that term. Okay? We have different publics. Excuse me. And you have three levels of public. You have a primary public. A primary public is somebody or some group of people that your school or your company or whatever has direct contact with. So primary publics you have direct contact with. Secondary publics all right, I can't just give it to you. You've got to be thinking. If primary contacts you have primary publics you have direct contact with, what makes a group of people or whatever secondary public? Mary.
Is it someone, the public that has contact with the primary public and not with you?
Well, yes. What is that called? Do they have contact with you?
No. Kind of-ish.
Kind of-ish. And what's that word?
Indirect.
Indirect. So it's people that have indirect contact with you. It's not the direct object, it's the indirect object, right? That's the only time we use those words. So we have our primary publics, the primary people that we need to have communication with, two-way communication with, is the people we have direct contact with. Then there's secondary publics, people that have contact with us, but it's indirect. It's through someone else or something else in some way or another. And then there is tertiary. Woo, big fancy word, tertiary. What does that mean? The third level, very hard. Primary is first level, secondary, tertiary, thirdly. And then you get into quantum stuff. That's just far out. No, tertiary level would be people that you have no contact with, or publics that you have no contact with. Barrick? Tertiary. 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 I saw that somewhere before I got these notes. I can't remember what class I was in when I had. What, art? I never had art class. I was deprived. I was gladly deprived, but oh boy, I don't want art. I'm sure I must have did something in grade school. Put popsicle sticks together or something. Glued them to my soup can. And called it a pencil holder or something like that. Tertiary. That's third level. So your primary is closest to you, direct contact. Secondary, indirect contact. You have contact with them, but not directly. Third level, tertiary, you have no contact with them. All right, now you get to think. Say, what have we been doing? My brain is almost melting. You're a Christian school. Who are your primary publics? Who are your primary publics? Heather, tell us one.
The families in the school?
The families in your school. If we were a business, what would we call them? Customers. Yep. Okay. So the families in our school. So that would be the students and the parents. Yep. Who else? Who else? Nicole? The church. So in most situations, most of the situations that we come from, our Christian school is part of a church. And so our church, the members of our church, even if they don't have children that are school age, they do have direct contact with our school. So church members would be as a primary public. Who else? Sarah. The other teachers in the school. Okay. That's a tricky situation because it's true, but not always. All right, and here's how. And I'm going to give away a point that we'll talk about in the next time, but we'll just do it anyway. Okay? So the school does have the school, meaning the administration, does have direct contact with their teachers, and they really need to know, they need to have two-way communication between administration and teachers. So in that sense, the teachers are a primary public. But the teachers are part of the school. And so the teachers, they have a primary public relationship with the administration, but then they have students and parents. So when the student or when the parent sees the teacher, they don't distinguish the teacher from the administration. They're dealing with the school. Okay? A parent talking to a teacher, talking to a secretary, talking to a janitor, talking to the principal, is talking to the school. Okay? So teachers are kind of, in one sense, because they're an employee, we got to have two-way communication between the teachers and the administration. But also teachers are on the institution side of a primary relationship with parents, just like the administration is. Okay? So that's a good one. It's a little more complicated, but it's actually true. Jacob.
I know that some schools have direct contact with the press for school cancellations and stuff. We coordinated directly with news agencies to get that information out.
Right.
Whenever we needed a public statement.
Okay.
So I consider that a primary.
How? Because that person has direct contact with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. And there would be. Okay. Anyone else? Any more primary publics? Barrick?
Maybe the local government and its agencies?
Yes. Certain parts of it, like the fire marshal, there'd be certain people that come and have direct contact with your school. They would be, so some in the local government would not be primary publics, but some would be. And what is a representative?
Somebody who promotes ACE and
Yeah,
goes
and
around to see if you're
uh-huh.
administering
What is he trying to?
properly.
Oh, that? Administrate properly? So he has direct contact, but when I think of a representative, what's that?
Propaganda.
Yeah. No, I think of that he's there. He's there to make sure that we use his product. And what are we going to have to do if we're going to use his product? We're going to buy it, right? He's a salesman. Okay? Are there any other salesmen that will come to your school? Little kids? Yes. No, I mean, do you have, depending on the size of your school, you could have people come through that want to supply you with janitorial supplies. There's a salesman who's going to come in. You might not develop a relationship with him, but he has direct contact with you. You might, the church secretary might just go buy that stuff, those supplies. But, so any kind of salesman is, even though they're not really related to Christian education, they are a primary public. They're somebody that your school, your institution has direct contact with. Jacob?
It depends directly on like the location of the school, but neighbors certainly, if they ever have interactions with the school, they're right next door or something.
Right.
So you could have a direct.
You could. If you have some real, well, if you're at extreme ends of your, for lack of a better word right now, reputation, you could have direct contact with neighbors. I mean, if you're a terrible neighbor, the neighbor might come over. Or if you're a super neighbor, the neighbor might come over. But neighbors generally fall into secondary publics.
And maybe
Primary or secondary?
primary.
Oh, because he transitioned into secondary. We're not talking about primary anymore. No, go ahead.
Maybe schools that you participate in sports with.
Okay, yes, we have direct contact. You're going to go to their school, and you're going to use their facilities. They're going to come to your school. They're going to use your facilities. They have to interact with your people, your teachers, your coaches, your students, all of that. And really, in that situation, who is the school? Everybody is, even the students. Right? See how that relationship got twisted there? Okay. If you have another school coming to your school, that school doesn't look at maybe if they're perceptive they do, maybe the parents do, but the kids, they look at the other kids and say, Fairhaven's a bunch of jerks. Or, and they think the administration is jerks, the parents are jerks, the teachers are jerks, the kids are jerks, everybody's a jerk over there at that school. Okay? Or whatever. So everybody, depending on the relationship, you might be part of the institution, and in another part of the relationship, you might be a public of the institution. So, yes, that was a good one. All right, so then secondary, on the secondary level, it's those that have indirect contact with the school. And Jacob mentioned neighbors. And neighbors pretty much have indirect contact with the school. Their fence, separates their yard from your preschoolers. Or their dog from your preschoolers. Hopefully we don't have direct contact. Or not bad direct contact. So, neighbors. Who else might have indirect contact with your school? How would they think now? How does somebody have indirect contact with the school? Okay, so who would have indirect contact with school? Barrick?
Maybe extended family of students or
Extended family. So they live out of town. if they're in the same town, they might be direct contact. I mean, if Grandpa lives across town and he comes to all the things, he's coming to, But if Grandpa lives in another city, in another state, he obviously hears about the school. He has indirect contact with school. He knows about the school, but not directly. Extended family, absolutely.
Maybe like websites and people looking at your website maybe because it's not like they're having direct contact with you, but they're reading something about you. So maybe they read a news article online of you. Or
Yeah, I never thought of that necessarily, but I think that would be more tertiary. Yeah. Megan?
Maybe graduates or teachers that go out to different schools and teach, they would still be.
Yeah, they have some connection. Real generally, friends or acquaintances of your customers. Somebody, a parent works somewhere, the people he worked with very likely would be secondary, indirect contact. Now, if the guy never talks about what his kids do at school, then they're tertiary. Okay. But if he says, yeah, my kid's, on the soccer team, can I get off early? So, oh, where does he play soccer? Boom. All of a sudden, that person is a secondary public of your school. All right? So then the third level. Go ahead.
I mentioned earlier press groups. So if someone watches a news report or reads an article or something like that, that is secondary. They're getting information, but they're not getting it directly from you. They're getting it from
Right.
an in-between.
Yes. And they're getting from an in-between. Most people would say that in those situations, that person, a reporter, while he personally may have come to your school and had direct contact, I would think that most people would think of reporter as holding, they don't always do this, but holding himself to a certain standard that puts him as a secondary, even though he's been there, he's going to report as if he's just reporting information. And so the people that get that information are going to be more on a tertiary level. So, tertiary, no contact, would be those who just drive by the school. They're not neighbors, but on their way to work every day, they drive by the school. And they see the piles of garbage that is stuck in the chain link fence along there. Okay? I say that's obviously bad public relations, isn't it? But it is public relations, isn't it? If you have that, you've seen places like that, maybe not a Christian school, but you see places like that, and all the garbage is caught in the chain link fence. You think something about that place. You form an opinion about that place. That letting your facilities look like that is not responsible performance or good character, right? So, tertiary, those who drive by the school, and those who read a billboard. We don't have this as much in our circles, but there's some Christian schools still big enough, and the laws they can comply with the laws enough that they have bus pickup. Or for that matter, the bus is driving down the road taking the soccer team to another place. They see a bus. They see Fairhaven Baptist Academy. That bus says something to them. How well it's clean or dirty or rusty or whatever, right? So they see it, but that's all. They see a news story. They see an advertisement in the newspaper. So all of those types of contact, those types of non-contact, not actual physical contact, but information contact perhaps, is in a tertiary level. So, since we have talked about it already, I want to finish today by talking about who is involved in public relations. I had a whole class on public relations, so you're not getting the whole class. I'm just trying to give you an introduction to it, the parts that I think are important for everybody that works in Christian education to know. So today we have explored what public relations is not, given you a definition of what it is. What is it? It's an effort. It's a planned effort based on two-way communication. And the planned effort is to influence public opinion. But we're going to influence that public opinion not by press agentry, spin doctors, publicity, but by good character and responsible performance. So that's the definition of public relations, and the communication that we have, the two-way communication, is with three levels of people. People that we have direct contact with, people that have contact or friends or whatever of those direct contacts, which would be indirect contact, secondary, and then people that have no contact with us but that see us or know about us in some way or another. Even government officials would be tertiary. A lot of government officials would be tertiary. They know about us. We know, oh yeah, that Christian school on the north side of the county, but that's about all. But once we get them to come on campus for something special, okay? And why would we do that? Because we want to demonstrate what good character and responsible performance we have. Okay, it is, all that type of thing is related to the idea. So we have the levels of publics. That's the people out there that we're going to try to influence, or that we are going to influence and base our efforts toward influencing them on our two-way communication. Who then does that? Okay. We have them out there and us in here. Who is us? Who takes care of public relations for a school?
Are you saying who heads it up, or who takes care of it overall? Because I would think that most anybody involved in the school would be a representative of it.
Okay, so you think that most anybody involved in the school would be a representative of the school? Okay. How would that be? Why is that? If it's true, why?
Well, if you have somebody, like you were saying with the tertiary public, they don't know anything about it except for what they see on the outside. If they were to come in contact with, say, one kid or a teacher from that school that obtained a bad, like a
Impression. Yeah.
It would definitely formulate a picture in their mind of what the school is.
Okay, and doesn't that make sense? So if you are the janitor, it's your job to mop the floors. You're involved in public relations. Because when the salesman comes in and has to use the restroom, or when the postal lady comes in, she sees something. If you're the secretary, all you do is you're in the back. Nobody ever sees you. You're involved in public relations because everybody sees the result of your work. They see the letter that you typed up. They see the figures that came up with their bill. And whether you were accurate or inaccurate or sloppy or whatever. So everybody knows the principal's involved. Everybody knows the teacher is involved. But many times we forget that everybody is involved. Okay? Everybody has a part has a function to fulfill, has a part to play in schools or in any organization's public relations. Now, sometimes an organization gets big enough and that they say, we really want somebody to help us out with this, or to concentrate on this and help us all out with it. We all should remember that we're all part of it. Teachers need to know that. And even in a certain sense, I don't know that this happens. I can't remember if it happened or if it didn't. And I can't say that I know it would have or wouldn't have. But even students should be reminded when they go somewhere else that you're representing Fairhaven Baptist Academy. You're not, in a certain sense, you're not representing yourself. You're not even representing your parents. You're representing Fairhaven Baptist Academy, because we're going to this, fire station or this museum or whatever as Fairhaven Baptist Academy. So everybody needs to remember that they're part of that they represent the institution, and the little things that they do are part of that. And all of these ideas that we've talked about can be done without an office of public relations. You don't have to have I can't remember the name, but a full-time public relations person to be able to have good public relations. But it does help to understand what it is and what's involved in it. And even though we haven't gone over it in a tremendous amount of detail, we've talked about what it's not, and that helps us know that it's more than that. And in our next session, we will talk about areas of concern, or concern might not be the right word, but think about, in a Christian school, what are some specific areas that adjustments can be made to that would influence your relationship with a school's publics. Okay? And if you can, think of them in connection with the idea of good character and responsible performance.